So now we're going to look at the invasion of Parthia by Mark Antony and the Romans, and the wars between them between 41 and about 36 BC. You can recall the events of the invasion, understand why it's a disaster, and look at the sources. Loads of key words that will come across during the lesson, but you'll need to refer to them, the spellings, later on. So, a bit of background first. In about 40 BC, what does the Roman army look like? It's now starting to take the shape people are familiar with in popular culture. It's legionaries, all uniformly equipped and trained, very well trained now, having had many years civil wars fighting each other. So you've got your standard Roman legionary, still got your Montefortino helmet, you've got this oval-shaped shield, armour of some sort, it could be chainmail or the segmentia here, pilums, javelins, etc., etc. And they fight as close order heavy infantry, like this, backed up by the usual mixture of rubbish Roman cavalry and half-decent allied cavalry. They're essentially a heavy infantry army. And they're going to attack the Parthians in the same sort of place where the Persians were. The Parthians fight wars in a very different way. Wide open plains. The bulk of their army is horse archers. Yeah. If they've got a 10,000 man army, 9,000 of them are going to be horse archers. A nightmare for the Romans on the open plains. Extremely skillful. It's called the Parthian shot. That can actually shoot arrows at you while they're running away from you. Once they've worn you down, it's time to finish you off. They develop what's called cataphracts, what look very much like medieval knights, head to foot covered in armour, horses armoured, long lance, and they smash into you once you're sort of weakened by all the horse archers. So a completely different way to fighting wars than the Romans. And in fact, if you remember, about 10 years before all this, the Romans, led by a man called Crassus in the first triumvirate, had attempted to invade Parthia, and these forces had been completely wiped out. Standards taken, Crassus had his mouth filled with molten gold. So the Parthians are very confident about fighting the Romans. They've already mullered them and completely destroyed a big Roman army once. So at the start of our period, sort of 40, 41 BC, the Parthians actually attack the Romans. Antony is away dealing with all the nonsense between Octavian and Cleopatra and his own political stuff. His man Ventidius leads his armies in the east, and they actually do very well, largely because we think the Parthians have become a little bit overconfident, and Ventidius is a gifted commander who figures out how to fight them. He has a mixed force, not just heavy infantry. He makes sure he has archers behind them. He makes sure that the infantry stay in formation, shields up, so the horse archers can't touch them. He makes sure he has in his army some decent allied cavalry to help him out. And when, most importantly, he manages to lure the Parthians into battles in territory that doesn't suit them, hilly ground, broken ground, he makes them charge uphill. And in that way, he's able to inflict several quite big defeats on the Parthians, much to the relief of the Romans. And here is Plutarch's version of this. A large army of Parthians against Syria. Ventidius met them and defeated them and destroyed much of the army, provided the Romans with complete revenge for the disaster suffered by Crassus at Carrhae. Ventidius, however, does not pursue them, according to Plutarch, because he feared the jealousy of Antony. Antony, who's now quite clear, who's now near, would not allow Ventidius to make peace terms with Antiochus. He's one of the people they're attacking. Ventidius is the only man up to now to celebrate a triumph over the Parthians. So Ventidius obviously has done well. He's waiting for Mark Antony to arrive for the main invasion, which happens around about 37, 36 BC. Antony gathers together an enormous army, approximately 100,000 man army, and he's going to attack the Parthians from the north. He can be based in Armenia and take a chunk out of them here in what's called Media. That's his plan. He marches his army into Parthian Empire. On the way, he decides to divide his forces. He takes his troops and cavalry on to attack a city, but leaves the heavy equipment behind because it's slowing them down. Hoping, oh, if I just turn up at the city, they'll just surrender. He turns up, the city's attacking, the fortress doesn't surrender because they hasn't got any siege equipment with him. Meanwhile, the force he's left behind, the heavy equipment, is ambushed and slaughtered. So now Mark Antony, very large army, in the Parthian Empire, outside of a city, no heavy equipment, no chance of winning, and he's forced to leave what's called a fighting retreat, a rear guard. He has to slowly retreat back to his own territory, all the way being attacked and harried by Parthians. It's not a complete disaster. It's not a massive defeat, but Antony loses a large part of his army and has to retreat, ambushed all the way by the Parthian king Phraates. So it's not good. It goes badly. Obviously, Antony has the responsibility for this. But what's this got to do with our main story, Cleopatra? Well, Plutarch, who's our main source for all this, doesn't agree that all this is Antony's fault. I wonder who he's going to blame. So here's Plutarch's version of it. So Phraates becomes the king of the Parthians. Takes his guy Onassis. He fled to Antony. Antony says, "Great, you can join us now." A bit like Themistocles. We'll give you 3 cities, but then I'll send you back to the Parthians in order to sow dissent, in order to make them think I want peace. All I want, Antony says, I want the return of the standards captured from Crassus. Antony himself sent Cleopatra back to Egypt and marched through Arabia and Armenia to a place where his army was to meet the armies of the allied kings. Big list of them. Here Antony held a review of his army. 60,000 Roman legionaries, cavalry, 10,000 Iberians and Celts, other nations number 30,000, so approximately 100,000 man army. They say that all this preparation and power would frighten even the Indians beyond Bactria and cause all of Asia to shake with fear. It was of no use to Antony because of Cleopatra. She's not even there, and Plutarch's blaming her for this. Antony was so eager to spend the winter with her, he began the war too early in the season for his own for campaigning. He made a mess of his management of the campaign. He was not in control of his own judgment. He behaved as though influenced by some drug or magic spell. He was always looking in her direction, always thinking about how fast he could return to her, rather than how best to defeat the enemy. So the fact that Antony divides his forces and gets beaten, Plutarch manages to blame on Cleopatra and the effect she's having on him. Continuing on the same vein, after the defeat, after he's on the retreat, hurrying through the already heavy winter weather, the never-ending snowstorms, he lost 8,000 men on the march. He himself, however, accompanied by a few men, went down to the sea, a place called the White Village, and waited for Cleopatra to meet him. She travelled slowly, so he wandered about restlessly, getting drunk. In the middle of the drinking, he would often stand up and jump up to go and look out until she sailed into the harbour. She brought with her lots of food and money, clothing and money rather. However, She got the clothes of Cleopatra, but he gave the money, though he gave it out as if she had provided it. He's still covering for her. So you have this huge military defeat for the Romans, an attack on Parthia that's gone badly wrong. Cleopatra's not there, but Plutarch's still blaming her for it. And if you want to have a look at this, why can't the Romans, the Parthians, beat each other? They're too different. If the Parthians attack the Romans in mountains and valleys, Romans win. If the Romans attack the Parthians in big wide open plains, Parthians win.